taking mine off.
Nice, good job.
Anybody still listening?
This has been a test of the Manzi broadcast system.
Hello, everybody. You are listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College. We are the voice of Richland College.
What's up?
In Dallas, Texas. Views expressed on this show are Dusty's own, unless otherwise stated, and do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, or the DCCCD. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been 9 months since my last haircut, and it's really starting to annoy me.
Oh, man.
All right, folks, here we are. Back!
Do you cut your own hair, by the way?
Back! Are you saying I have bad haircuts? It looks like I come out here.
Oh, I don't know.
It's actually funny you say that. My mom is a hairdresser.
Oh,
my mom is a
nice.
hairdresser, and so I was raised.
So your mommy does your hair for you?
Yeah, well, her and her alone, and she lives in Connecticut, Mystic, Connecticut. Shout out Mystic Pizza, and I live here in Dallas, Tejas. So the haircuts are few and far between.
Yeah, are we sponsored by them?
Hopefully, we're trying. We're courting them.
We're going to get a cease and desist in the week.
That assumes people listen. That's just it, folks. I'll see my mother, 4th of July, and then I'll see her around Christmas, and that's when I get my haircuts. So, 2 every 6 months.
Awesome.
And I didn't quite see her 4th of July, so the hair has been growing. I might actually have to go to a complete stranger and let them wield a pair of sharp objects over my head and come very close to my skull, which obviously, as you know, houses my genius brain. So,
Whoa.
I'll do you one better. I have a Zweihander at home. I can cut your hair with that.
what did you say?
I
You
have a
a
Zweihander at home. It's
What
a
is
big
it?
6-foot-long sword.
Oh, wow.
It's real and it's sharp. I'll cut your hair with it.
You should have brought that in today.
I think, actually, as of September of 2018, I could have done that. So
Oh, man.
What do you mean? Why is that date relevant?
I think there was some Texas legislation that permitted the open carry of any kind of
Oh, yeah,
long blade,
blades.
including
Yeah.
spears, swords, axes.
I've heard of that.
So really
Wow.
fun for Scarborough.
Jeez, but that'll make D&D games really come alive, I think.
Oh, here's hoping. Here's hoping. You can get real goblins.
Goblins.
Well, speaking of goblins. Speaking of go,
Go to the polls.
go to the polls. Let's go to introductions. So, of course, this is the Philosophy Club Radio Hour every Thursday, 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, live here on KDUX Web Radio, and eventually uploaded to YouTube for the video podcast. Now, I'll say this. Our trusty engineer, our trusty producer, Jack Fletcher, is not in the building. So we've commandeered the studio, and I guess that makes me in charge.
Oh,
I'll be executive producing.
mutiny.
Pirate radio.
Yeah, he's never coming back.
I'm Captain No.
My basement.
Is it?
Hey, some people really like the Texas State Fair, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, I'm excited because after this, we can maybe do a lot of post-production tricks.
Oh.
I'm joking. But listen, guys, the Philosophy Club meets every Tuesday, 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in EO 32. And this semester, it's the Philanthropology Club. So we've conjoined with the Anthropology Club. And the topics
This
are...
is the right way to wear it, dude.
yeah, you look like Geordie LaForge from The Next Generation.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, but I totally forgot his name. I
It doesn't stay
His
up.
names are key.
There we go.
was going to say Visor Man.
I'm going to wear it like this for the rest of the
See
show.
this? This is humanity right here. This is the
Exactly.
future of
Oh,
humanity.
Exactly.
It looks like the latest Green Day music video.
What?
What's interesting is that
Can't see.
the reason I remember Geordie LaForge is because Geordie spelled with a G, and my name Jeffrey spelled with a G. And I learned very early on, see, you could have names with J and also be G. I'm not alone, but it turns out I still feel alone. All right, so the topic, folks, is what is it to be human? Or if you read the whiteboard, what is human?
Sadly,
So-
I wasn't around for the actual club meeting, but
Sadly
Fred here
for who?
told me that it was a little bit heated between you two.
Me and Orlando? Is that right?
He said it was just a bunch of back and forth between you two.
Lando Calrissian, is that right?
Where he's in the correct side of the group.
Oh, ouch.
Everything is human.
I will say this. I did notice that at a certain point, people were chuckling to themselves across the circle. And I'm like, it must be because there's an inside joke that I talk too much. And when I start to go off on a tangent,
no.
people are chuckling like, oh, there he goes again.
There goes the windbag.
Yeah, exactly. When will he realize it's our club and not his? It's not a one-man show. I mean, these are all things that Orlando told me to my face.
Is
But,
it not your club, though? It's your club.
No, it's not. It's your club, dude. It's your club way more than my club.
It's only as much as his club as he wants it to be.
Exactly.
And he wants it all. I can see it in his eyes.
I mean,
He's
I take
got
full responsibility
murderous
for
intent.
it. Anywho, anybody going to see Dracula this weekend? Put on by the 3 Theaters production.
No.
Dracula.
Dracula, the play, Dracula the play, is putting on by
Dracula the play. I
3
didn't even know.
theaters. It's awesome. I suggest checking it out.
When?
This
3
weekend.
theaters.
So is Dracula human?
It's this weekend in 3. Oh, that's kind of what I was bringing it up for.
It's
is
vampire.
It's yeah. I mean, this didn't really come up as much as I would have expected it to have. The idea that what defines a human being, if you go back to the ancient Greeks, what defines a human being is that, among other things, we're not immortal, which is to say we're mortal. And yet, that's the funny thing about vampires. They never die.
Well, they can still die. They can still be killed.
With a stake in
They're
the heart or
certainly not
something?
invincible. I think immortality could be like the most interesting exploration of the human spirit.
Where-
because we
interesting.
always have that way to live authentically where we're looking at when we die. But if we have like no option to
But Linda,
die.
move the microphone so we can see his face. He's making
Oh,
a
yeah.
great point.
Hey,
Oh wait, let me.
there it
There
is.
we go.
There we go.
Biggest
Yes.
cutie of 2019.
Thank you for saying that. I feel that way about myself.
Proud of yourself, old man.
boy.
Ouch.
Ego's here.
But if like a human's immortal,
ego to my
then
Frankenstein.
what is he to do really? He's got millions of years of time on his hands. Ooh, we're getting a whole new group member,
Life finds a way.
new band member.
Awesome.
What instrument do you think he plays?
I'm not sure.
We'll put him on bass.
I'm bass. He's drums.
Of course, you're bass. You are useless.
You think the bass is useless?
No, but I am just digging on you. Because
Oh, I know you
are,
dig me.
You know.
It's you're very outspoken in class. That's because you're digging the material, and of course, I am the Sherpa of the philosophical world. I'm taking you through a journey of loss of innocence. That sounds weird.
This sounds like a very abusive relationship. I'll tell you
Yeah,
that
it definitely is. He's
No,
really
it's
holding
a
these braids over
shepherding.
my head.
It's a
It's a
shepherding.
shepherding.
Yes. He calls me Big G. He hasn't called me Big G once yet. The entire show.
Yep.
Big G.
Call him Big G. I'm just waiting for him to call me son. Abandon your other kid. He's too annoying. Adopt me instead.
Oh man.
He's right next to you. No,
Oh, not even.
Orlando's like, no thanks.
I mean, I'll be fine living with him.
Anyways,
I'm okay.
Kalen, you're right on time. We haven't even started talking about the topic at hand, which is again Dracula. No, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, it's not 3:30 yet.
Which is again
Dracula.
the exactly. See, this is actually. You know what? I forgot. We're supposed to give introductions. So,
No.
okay, it's your first time here,
Shows yet.
Dusty.
Oh, yeah.
We just started introductions.
That's me, Dusty.
Anything you want to plug? Any clubs? Any-
Yeah, I do have something
A
I want to
podcast?
plug. At 5 o'clock from 2 to 3, it's your boy Dusty Hill doing When the World Turned. That's my podcast. I'm talking about all the interesting historical points.
Great plug. I
where
think we
the
totally
world
heard that.
turned.
Anyways,
It's over.
Moving
Stop.
Wow,
on.
how dare you?
Repeat that. I did cut your mic.
Oh, wow. 2 to 3, Friday.
You cut my
when
mic.
the world turned. History, not your dad's history.
Who's inessential
This is
now.
dope bomb
said no-
history.
Sounds like drunk history to me.
I can't.
That's a
I can't
copyright,
drink on
sir.
campus, so
No, that's the Philosophy Club Radio Hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Kalen always comes in here drunk. I'm joking. Anyways,
Because you call him Scotch.
yeah, I keep the whiskey in
he
my
is
sleeve.
Scottish.
I am Scotch Irish for a reason.
But I am curious. Tell me more about your podcast. So you're going to give, as you say, the adult history. So what does that mean exactly?
I definitely didn't say adult history. I said not your dad's history. So I mean, like,
You said you're giving the only real history for gods. What does
yeah,
that mean?
that's exactly what I
For
said. I said the
God's-
only real history. If you accept any other view, you are foolish. But I'm going to be talking mostly about
Zoomer history. Yeah, got it.
Zoomer history, big hope. But talking mostly about stuff like battles and wars that led to how empires rise and fall. So the first episode on Friday is going to be the first, second, and third Punic Wars. How
Oh, that's really
Rome fell, or sorry, Rome rose and Carthage
Second,
fell,
yeah.
basically signing its own death warrant in the Second Punic War.
What do you find
Very
interesting about that
interesting,
stuff?
I think mostly.
I'm not trying to
about-
put you on the spot. I'm just wondering.
Oh no, I got you.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was inspired by Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, which is
Can we overdub Dan Carlin and put the name Jeff Manzi? Jeff?
Jeff Manzi's Hardcore History.
I've never heard of
He-
Dan
Hardcore
Carlin's.
history is great. It's
yeah,
fantastic.
you're missing out if you haven't watched
Really?
it. Really, his Blueprint for Armageddon series is fantastic,
No
and it's
kidding.
free. We can play it right now. It's about 3 hours, so
Shout out
really
Carlin.
we can
3
stop.
hours.
We can stop
Jeez.
gibbering. And
I'm
play
still
that.
waiting on that next Supernova in the East episode. What's
Yeah,
going
let's
on with
hope.
that?
But what really got me interested was that, and also my academic decathlon, where we talked a lot about history. And I've always been kind of a nerd for that. So when I'm looking at stuff like the Battle of Kani, the Siege of Stalingrad and Leningrad, it really it sparks my mind. I'm thinking like, what's it like to be in the trenches? What's it like to be fighting brick by brick and floor by floor against the Soviets or against the Nazis? What's it like to be in the Battle of Kani, putting my head in the sand so that I'm not stabbed by the Carthaginian cavalry?
I love it. No, that sounds great.
Got some
Very
real geeks in here today.
Yeah, big geek.
So
I'm
really,
just
so
really
really
good.
Jeff, it's a
Because
show
world
about
history kinda
Qualia.
sucks.
It's a show about Qualia.
Yeah.
Qualia.
That should be the tagline. There you go. Anyways.
Wow.
It's the most boring way of describing what
It
you
really
just
is.
said.
It's so clinical or academic. Yeah, okay, so that sounds great. Check out, do you have the name of the podcast? Do you have a name for it?
When the World Turned.
Oh, okay. Wasn't that a soap opera?
That was
I hope
As
so.
the World Turns.
Oh, that was As the World Turned. I hope. It was the real soap opera, Human History.
Yeah, I don't want to get a cease and desist.
Okay, yeah, so check that out. And that's going to be every Friday from, what is it, 2 to 3?
Yep, 2 to 3.
Nice.
Awesome,
nice.
very cool.
Could go later. Looks like there's no one else. Oh, yeah, there is.
Yeah,
Nah,
there
we'll
is.
just take over old Dave or Yakin.
Yakin. Yeah,
I'll invite
Yakin.
him.
There you go.
Wow, so there are radio programs until 7 p.m. on Friday? That's
Jeez.
kind of unusual. Anyways, yeah, so that's very good. Check that out. And, of course, he's going to plug the Loss of Innocence class that he's in, my honors learning community.
Yeah, big fan.
He's a big fan.
G is in here every day in and day out. He's really
Big G's.
philosophizing hard, and he's really letting us speak our mind, and I appreciate it. I give him a
Thank you.
solid 5 out of 10.
I'll take it. Thank you very much. It's the highest rating I've ever gotten.
Oh.
Who's next?
Oh man.
Rate your professor live.
Too real. Okay, what's up?
You can go ahead and skip me. I'm a ghost today.
What?
I'm just not here.
Well, Orlando, I want to know.
What you're seeing is not real.
Cutest Ghost of 2019.
Oh, thanks, man.
Orlando, so I did want to bring this up on the air. So we're going to get this service learning happening. I
Okay.
spoke again recently to John Daniels, and as I said in our ethics class, Orlando, this. Oh, by the way, if you're my ethics class, the online forum that we're speaking of, the collaboration with the honors psychology class, it's actually happening tomorrow. It's not a week from tomorrow. It's tomorrow. So let me
it's
go ahead and
tomorrow.
email all
Oh,
the students that,
ouch.
because I got a little mixed up. But yeah, so it's going to be at any rate. Yeah, it looks like there's going to be an opportunity for service learning through the Philosophy Club. And it's going to be spearheaded again by the PC president here, Orlando,
PC president. Wow.
as well as your PCP resident.
Oh,
Wow,
I
awesome.
like that.
Great. I love it.
And
Good title.
I want to
Never
be
taken.
meth. Anyways, because I have the method. Obviously,
Etological.
that's what I was talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
I was not talking about the other thing. Okay, well, it's the president of the Philosophy
So,
Club.
he'll be stepping
That's
down
me,
now.
Joffrey, he's always interrupting me. I don't like it.
I'm getting that. So this is interesting. Apparently, Orlando's been spreading the word that we had a little bit of a back and forth.
No,
And I was
that's
agreeing
not
with
true.
you. For the record, Orlando, I was agreeing with you.
That's not true. I said you were wrong at the club. That's what I said.
I don't remember you saying that.
I told my. Well, you what? What'd you say?
Every time I hear you talk, I just hear you saying I'm right, and that goes to everybody else in my life.
Oh.
Anyways,
When I listen to you talk, it's just a whine.
you know I'm.
It's constant.
Oh, he's talking to you, Orlando.
Oh, really?
Oh no, he's talking to Scoggins. I'm
Oh
sorry.
no, I like you too much, Orlando.
Oh, thanks.
No, it's definitely Manzi. No question.
Appreciate that. I believe you referred to me in class as a rat because of the way I would scurry.
I didn't
gosh.
say it because you're like a rat. I just said it because you have very rat-like mannerisms.
That's
It
quite a
wasn't
mea. That's
like
quite a
so
mea
bad.
culpa. That's
I
quite a
love
mea
rats.
culpa. You're the rat.
Wow, I can't believe you'd say something like that. Something so true.
Hey, I am hungry for that cheddar.
Oh,
All right,
wow.
I'm kicking you off. I'm taking over the podcast.
It's really fortunate because our classroom with the Loss of Innocence learning community, there's 4 whiteboards. It's a really bizarre kind of class. I love it, for the record. I mean, so what I do is I put stuff on one and I run across, I scurry across, I guess like a rat, Dusty, to the other side of the room and I put stuff on that and then I go back and forth. But he's my lights guy, so he gets it.
Yeah, that's all I am to you. isn't it?
Look,
let
I
me
only
see your
called
face.
I only
Move.
called you a
Orlando.
rat.
Sorry, dude. This
It's not-
first of all, I'm beyond overexposed, so I just look like a puddle of whiteness.
Yeah, seriously,
blinding.
I've noticed that as well.
Hey, Jeff, Puddle of Whiteness is our band name.
Oh,
right?
perfect. Yeah, I think Inclusion Richmond will appreciate that. Anyhow, yeah. So okay. We're 21 minutes in. Let's talk about the topic. Oh wait, I didn't give my I didn't get my props. Is what I almost said. I didn't give my plugs. Okay, so yeah. First and foremost, guys, shout out to those who came to the film series last Thursday. I'm sorry, last Wednesday. It was pretty awesome.
Plus the Matrix now.
And we talked about the Examine Life. We're taking, I guess, suggestions for the following film series, which will be the fourth Wednesday of October. We've had a few thrown out there. I believe you suggested Eraserhead, which I think is
did.
a dope movie. We'll see if we can get the copyrights to that. I believe Hannah Watson, our communications officer, suggested something recently. She sent my way. Title escapes me, but it's something along those lines. Also, we are considering showing the debate between Slavoj Žižek and who's the other person?
Jordan Peterson.
That's right,
You
Jordan
really
Peterson.
want to watch just like
We'll
a big Slav stomp on a tiny Canadian, a tiny lobster Kermit.
Did you watch it? Did you actually watch the debate?
I have, and it is very funny.
It's pretty. Yeah, I think there's a clear winner.
See,
if you want
like,
to talk
I
winners
gotta
and
be
losers.
honest though, it's a little bit difficult to listen to Zizek's accent there.
Yeah, he does have a
like-
hard accent.
I think he's passionate.
Yeah, and there's like a big difference between the two because Jordan Peterson he's a professor. He actually is not in any way a philosopher. He's a psychologist. So it's kind of a mismatch of minds
But
here.
he doesn't shy away from the
Yeah.
term.
Yeah, but he should, because he's absolutely not qualified. But Jordan Peterson, he's very clearly a public speaker. Like he was known for horribly misinterpreting that Canadian bill. I forgot which one it was, but if you read the bill and you listen to what he says,
Yeah.
horribly transmitted, but he's very convincing. Zizek, on the other hand, he's not a very good talker. He
But
talks
he-
from the side of his tongue. He's very hard to listen to.
I think there's something to that because he was featured in the movie we saw, Examine Life, and you hear a lot of. It's funny because he's juxtaposed against all of these very eloquent speakers who are themselves professional philosophers or professors or both. And Zizek, his scene from the film is he's in like the middle of a trash bin.
Yeah, I
like
love that.
he's in a bunch of garbage, and he's really speaking
trash man.
passionately about it, and it's kind of like. Well, this guy might be making the best points, even though it's kind of a rough sort of articulation.
He's certainly making the boldest.
Excuse you, Orlando. You were riveted when you were watching that film.
Anyways, it's 20 minutes in, and
Have we decided what a human
how's
is?
that topic going along?
All right. We have an opening for President of Philosophy Club, Justin.
I'll take
I'm
that.
joking. All right,
Go
but
ahead, bro. You can have
Orlando's absolutely right.
I resign. You can have it.
No
It's
way.
up for opening.
That's 2 in 1 semester. All right, so
Wow.
get
What
real,
does that?
folks.
What does that say about it?
It shows that. Anyways, no, but you're right. We got to get to the topic, especially because I do believe that there is nobody after us.
Perfect.
All right.
Oh, there isn't. Wow.
No. Okay, so guys, I'm going to start the recording now. So we'll start the
now,
notes
huh?
and contents. Yeah. All right. So the question is, what is human? And it went in a variety of different ways. I feel it went from at a certain point there's like a 15-minute digression on what religion is, which was fascinating.
Oh.
In terms of does that capacity to, I guess, a spiritual capacity, is that definitive of humanity more so than other things? But then we also talked about AI again, which keeps coming up, and I think that's good. I don't think it's accidental. But I don't think we actually ever arrived at a consensus.
Shocker.
I'm sorry, Kalen, we didn't introduce you. This is Kalen Scoggins. He teaches. I'll introduce you. I should start introducing everybody. No, that's not true because I don't know half the guests on the show. This is Professor Kalen Scoggins, a full-time professor in the government department, and a big supporter of the Philosophy Club, as well as a big supporter of was it Patrick Moore's learning frameworks. Thanks for bailing me out, buddy. Thanks for bailing me out.
Yeah, I was trying to
Jesus.
figure out what you were saying. The Learning Connections workshops.
I can never think of the
The
title.
questioning government workshops.
The Questioning Government Workshops, that's what it is. So I lead some phenomenology workshops. Patrick Moore, shout out. He leads some Questioning Government workshops, and Kalen's been involved with those. What are you doing?
Don't worry
Are you
about it.
making fun of me?
Oh, no, I don't need to do that to make fun of you.
Also, October 9th, last day to register to vote for this November election.
Oh, don't forget to vote, boys and girls.
This is a small election.
That's
Usually,
dichotomous.
so the only thing on the ballot are some constitutional amendments for the Texas Constitution.
Ooh.
No person is running for office, so that means that usually we have single-digit turnout for these elections.
Wow.
Oh my gosh!
You
Really?
know, in my
So-
history class, we were actually just talking about the garbage Texas Constitution, and he actually said to
The
us,
garbage.
"You guys," because it's
Garbage.
Mr. Siegel, dope dude. He's like, I don't know,
Oh,
100
yeah,
million
Clive
years
is
old.
great. Yeah.
I love Clive. Yeah.
He's like, "You guys need to start writing a new constitution because we ruined it."
I mean, we've only had 500 amendments. What's a few
gonna
more?
say,
you know?
Just write a new one. Start from scratch. Texas is now a lawless state. We're going back to the cowboy days.
Well, there were some big pushes to reform it in the 70s and 90s. Didn't really get off the ground, though.
Because Texans don't care.
Get after that.
Is this where I get to go? Anyways,
Yes.
yeah. So
And my students, for that matter.
shout out Clive. Well, shout out Siegel, Professor
Shout out
Siegel.
Clive Siegel. You want a good history teacher? Pick
Yeah,
him.
he won. He won Professor of the Year 2 years ago, and with good reason.
Nice.
And also shout out while we're on the topic, Patrick Moore. I didn't realize this until just this moment. His video podcast, Moore and Friends, is still it's going every Thursday from 11 a.m. to noon.
Noon to 1.
I'm sorry, noon to 1. I was a guest on that a few years back. It's a great show, and support that as well.
You want to plug the rest of the board?
The rest of the board?
Go down
Would that
the
be my
list.
guests?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Board of
they
Trustees.
seem pretty bored. Anyways, speaking of which, you know who never gets bored? Anything other than humans.
Oh, yeah.
Is that
I mean,
right?
are you sure about that? Because
I
my
don't know.
dogs, they probably get bored. I don't know. It's
You
not like
think
they
they
do a
get
lot in
bored?
the house all day.
All they do is wait for you.
I'm not sure about that.
You think so?
All they do is cower from you.
yeah, exactly.
Oh man, I've heard that dogs actually rely on humans for love more than themselves.
Oh, that sounds like me with my relationship.
Yeah, can't you say
That's
that about
sad.
humans?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people.
Well, okay, so let's.
Mandy.
Speaking of which, thank you very much for that, Orlando. Speaking of which, let's turn to the topic now. Again, there were a lot of different little tangents that I think went down. It's time for the quack. And were there any particular
Quack.
tangents that you wanted to sort of continue to develop? Is there anything in particular that stuck out to you in the discussion that you think, well, that deserves more of a voice or a bit more consideration?
I heard the one about. I heard you talking about religion. Could you tell me more about
Sure.
what the discussion was?
Well, do you remember, Orlando?
Oh, I was basically just, a number of people were just contending. I was kind of just saying that religion, in a sense, is similar to science, just in the practice of the scientific method. That I also believe that it's kind of limited in a sense, like science, as to what we can understand as a whole in totality. And that's basically like the only thing I can really think of
Could
about
you
that.
explain the relation between the scientific method and religion on that one?
Well, essentially, is that it seems as if for science, it's almost as if it's a nuance. Essentially, yeah. I forgot what I was saying. I don't remember the.
A nuance, essentially.
I don't remember. To be honest with you.
Because it's kind of a hot take to say that religion is anything like the scientific process.
Well, it's no. In terms of as to how they kind of conclude, no, they're nothing alike, but rather.
Nothing alike.
Well, they certainly don't experiment.
Yeah, no. It's with the religion, it's almost as an absolute. You take an absolute and then you expand on that and then attempt to prove it.
I like that.
With science, essentially, you don't start with an absolute, but rather you work towards an absolute. But do you ever really reach it? That's kind of the question there. But the only relation that I was making between religion and science is that you have certain practices that you kind of are bound to, I guess you could say.
Like methodically bound to.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
ritualistically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Keelan, do you want to say something?
Yeah, was there any discussion of religion as being a subset or maybe special instance of justice?
I think it did come up.
Cool.
What do you mean by
I
that?
wasn't there.
Dun, dun. Dun, dun.
Oh, just a very influential definition of, or medieval definition of religion was that it's really a special case of the broader, I guess, class of or issue of justice. That religion is specifically rendering what is due to whatever is most ultimate. That religious practice is ultimately grounded in justice.
That's pretty
And
interesting.
that's what defines or what sets religion apart. Is it's justice in general is rendering to each what is due. Although figuring out what that is in practice is often very difficult.
That part did not come up.
yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
But I think we could take it there. Let me just continue what Orlando was saying. Here's what did come up, from what I recall, is that the question was, what are the distinctive human characteristics? What are they, and what makes, or another way to put it would be this, more phenomenologically. What is it about human experience that is different from all other kinds of experience? And one of the things we brought up that came up, I can't remember exactly who brought it up, one of the members of the club brought up the idea of, again, being able to be religious. Like having spirituality as a dimension, as a capacity of what it is to be human, is something that is essential, as well as, again, devoid or absent in all other living things or non-living things as well. So in trying to define religion, I gave way to questions of artificial intelligence. And it's like, well, is it if religion or spirituality is considered to be a key component of what it is to be human, not necessarily actually actualizing the capacity, but having it there. How can you consider something like a robot, and using a really just kind of broad term here, or an automaton or an android? How can you consider them to be human if there seems to be certain key components of human experience that will forever remain, I don't know, inaccessible to programmable?
Why would those always remain
automatons?
inaccessible? Why is there any limit?
Well, that
Who's
was
to say
kind of
there's
the
any
question.
kind of limit?
You're just going to laugh derisively. Okay, so I think here's the question. Things like religion, things like spirituality, kind of revolve around a question of our very being, of the why question. And if we are to, okay, so let me sort of say a couple things there. If we are to quote unquote input the data into an android that informs it not only of what to do and how to do things, but on some level when to recognize when it's not doing a good job. So kind of like the self-correcting programs that we can talk about. They never actually ask why or why not. Now, financial officer here of Richland College, Christopher, who constant member of the Philosophy Club, he brought up the point, well, and I think you kind of seconded him on this, Orlando. He brought up the possibility of, well, perhaps technology will reach a point, artificial intelligence will reach a point where the robot can exhibit something like a free will by virtue of the fact that it has a sort of in-depth adaptation quality to it. And so because it's able to adapt, it's able to analyze situations and then determine for itself the most efficient mode of action. And is that something like, perfect human reasoning, perfect human deliberation? And my point was this. The key thing about human experience seems to be the learning process itself, as opposed to learning processes. Does that make sense? And so part of that, that's how you kind of smuggle in religion, is that religion is a key component in coming to understand not just the what's, but the why.
Would you say the important thing there is not just the learning processes, as you put it, but being aware of the learning process as a learning process?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Yeah, and so you're aware of what's happening as you're changing, and you're willingly changing. It's not so clear to me that it's even possible to develop that kind of self-awareness technology, although I could be wrong, and people thought I was wrong.
Just to kind of wrap up this idea of religion and science, I kind of was just basing it on the idea of religion as a faith. Is that you're having a faith on something. For religion, it's a faith on a supernatural being, and for science, it's kind of a faith on the method. Obviously, one of them is backed by evidence, and then the other one isn't. But essentially, that's kind of like the parallels that I was drawing there. And before we go into artificial intelligence, I feel like we should define humanity before anything else.
I think that's kind of like a pointless endeavor, because the definition of humanity changes so much. Like I'm personally in favor of like just an abolition of defining what is human. I think it's completely useless, especially in the time that we're moving towards, where people are changing their bodies.
To an extent, maybe we can have like a vague definition.
Yeah, how do you
that you
justify
can stretch
rights?
that you can stretch out almost?
I mean, at that point, why even have a definition?
Then at that point, then anything is human.
Exactly, that's the point.
No, but that's not.
This rock
Why
is
not
human.
call anything human?
This mic right here I'm talking into
Are there
is
no
human.
real differences between one thing and another in general?
Are you going to say rocks deserve all the rights that humans deserve?
If
This
they,
mic
if
deserves
they
a right.
ask for them, sure.
They ask for
Well, why does that matter?
So then at that point, if
Matter.
asking for rights, would that then be human? Because that's kind of the point you're getting
Yeah.
here.
First of all, being able to ask a human something is kind of a monumental feat.
Wait, what do you mean by human?
Okay, that's fair. I'm being able to ask a Homo sapien with some form of language, perhaps.
Didn't you just
even
define
if you
human?
need a
Homo
form of
sapiens
language,
sapien,
that they desire
correct.
rights, then that is something, I guess you could say, traditionally human, to argue for your own rights, to argue for your own liberty or your own ability, in that you deserve something. I think that entitlement can be human.
Isn't that kind of a root from self-awareness, or rather consciousness,
Yeah.
or even self-sufficiency?
Yeah.
And how many animals are self-sufficient?
The ones that aren't domesticated by humans.
What do you mean by self-sufficiency?
How quickly we abandon the project of abolishing definitions.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking too. What?
What do you mean by self-sufficiency?
Essentially, the nature of humanity, or rather an individual, to always abstain to what is best for their interest.
I don't think that's what self-sustainability means, my G.
Okay, what is it then?
Self-sustainability is.
Oh,
I thought I was
said-
G.
I thought I said self-sufficiency.
Itself.
Or self-sustainability. Which one did I say?
Sufficiency.
I think you might want sustainability. I think sustainability would
Oh,
probably. be
you're letting him put words in your mouth like that?
Oh, no.
Dang.
No.
He
No,
changed the
sorry.
definition you said and then
changed
said
my-
you were wrong.
He changed my word and then said I didn't say the right word.
Jeez,
Oh,
he should be a professor. So listen, the reason I bring this up is because this was a huge talking point as well at the meeting. How, or rather, what is the standard by which we can begin to judge not just humanity in terms of what it is, but what it therefore deserves or what it's entitled to? And again, I'm thinking of rights here. And yeah, you kept pushing this idea of self-sustainability or self-sufficiency or you didn't say self-preservation, but you were like, the human being ultimately is that which is able to provide the means for its own survival and subsequent thriving. It's not so dependent on the environment. Now I'm putting words in his mouth. And so people begin to question, well, you can certainly teach a robot to do that, especially if a robot doesn't need the kind of things that an organic or an organism needs. And so at a certain point, and I think this was kind of where we ended the discussion, although it could have gone on. Can you not get to the point where you say, well, robots and human beings are different, but in terms of the capacities that they can exhibit, they are deserving of the same kind of liberties? But you don't necessarily have to call a robot a human to come to that conclusion.
It depends on, once again, it just depends on the definition of human. I mean, what are we getting at?
Well, you
know?
could say that a robot has
Just
human-like
self-sufficiency.
qualities and therefore demand or deserves human rights that would apply to any human. But you don't have to call them human rights. You can just say they're robot rights.
Well, yeah, kind of, or just rights. And, sometimes rights can extend to things other than human.
The universal rights.
But the question is, what are the relevant similarities there? Humans and robots are similar in that they're both made of matter, but is that enough?
Yeah, and there was a real pushback. I mean, responding to that question, there's a real pushback for some people who are saying that the organic tissue is in itself a reason to think humans are superior naturally.
Well, who's to say that an AI can't form a body that has organic tissue?
That's
Organic
interesting,
tissue is not really hard to make.
What do you mean?
You can make it through processes.
You mean like making babies?
I mean, you can. I mean, yeah. We cloned a sheep artificially.
Yeah,
You
we
can
did.
make artificial flesh.
Shout out cloning.
Yeah, big shout outs to cloning. Boys, let's fund cloning, please. I want a new me.
Well, this raises
This
the
one's
question.
Yeah,
garbage.
the fun stem cell research then at that
Absolutely.
point. He said absolutely. Abortion, yeah.
What is it that differentiates?
These are
the
Manzi's
organic
view,
from the
remember
Yeah,
artificial?
can we isolate where Orlando says abortion? Yeah, can I drop that whenever I want?
Can we clip that?
Exactly.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think you make a good point, because let's assume, for the sake of argument, you can replicate a human being in terms of its organicity, in terms of its organism. Well, here's the thing: can you really create something like a fake heart or a fake liver? Like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't need to if you just were to assume that the body of or rather the battery of a robot is akin to the heart, and so call it a heart, call it a battery, because you can do certain things through it. You all deserve the same kinds of treatments.
So an organ's defined by its function.
Perhaps. I mean, that seemed to be what people were arguing on Tuesday.
Also,
for
who's to
sure.
say that flesh is in any way superior to what an AI
Yeah.
can achieve?
And
'Cause,
that's-
if you have like steel muscles,
Exactly.
that's better than what any human can have.
Yeah, it's you can consider flesh a limit rather than some sort of defining characteristic.
Which I absolutely do. So narco
So now-
transhumanism, baby.
So now I'm curious, and what
That's
if
right, you were saying
what
that.
if we're able to isolate our consciousness? Like, what if we're able to upload it to maybe like a...
That is what
Yeah.
I'm hoping
And
for,
so- and
baby.
so-
Let's get the Dyson sphere in
and so,
this.
And so if we're able to do that, then this whole conversation of, we're made up of organic, then it kind of just goes out
Exactly.
the window. So
Who
what's the
cares?
point of that?
It's all about
What did the conversation
consciousness.
sound like?
Oh,
Orlando describes a philosophy club meeting.
exactly. That's how it goes.
Like to me, the only definition of any kind of, I guess you could say, humanity or whatever. If I'm going to immediately renege on the abolition of defining human,
Right.
is like that ability to perceive things as like a consciousness that I can reflect on. And if an AI can do that, go for
Then
it.
that's
He's
human.
human.
Yeah,
Don't care.
exactly.
I'd say that consciousness is the only thing that makes you human. Put me in a Dyson sphere simulation. I will be human forever.
Just start.
Anyways, no, and that's, I think, yeah, man, I wish you were here for that conversation. That's because people were more or less going in that direction. Nobody wanted to go that far.
Because they're
But
cowards.
But that's where maybe.
They're
But that's
cowards.
I wish I were there. The D&D session was kind of boring.
oh, really? Jeez.
Yeah,
Led to a
sure.
lot of further emotional issues.
Oh my gosh.
as it is. Anyways, yeah, when you can relate to yourself as an orc, I think there's an issue. But what do I know? Those movies made millions of dollars. At any rate, here's
Manzi's a furry.
Oh man. I'm not afraid for the
I can't believe your mom told you. Anyways,
Whoa.
Does she also make your suits?
we're gonna have to trash this episode. Okay. No, I'm joking.
To be
Put it
honest.
in the garbage.
Well, real quick though, I want to Boston accent and put it in the garbage.
Put it in the garbage.
Well, here's the other side of it, and this is the side I was advocating for, or at the very least, maybe not advocating for, but I said let's consider this. Now, the big idea among artificial intelligence, I guess, supporters is that it's superior in some way because they can accomplish human endeavors in a way that's far more efficient than other things. Get a nice stretch there. But I said maybe what's most human. He's not amused anymore. Maybe what's most human is the experiences of going through the struggle. And so I said maybe can you consider the things that artistically speaking you relate to, things that speak to you, works of poetry, whatever the case may be, and what it is that's speaking to you seems to be a person coming to terms with his or her limitations and kind of living through that experience. And if you have these sort of, I guess, artificial intelligence bodies, or not just bodies, artificial intelligence androids, automatons, and they are programmed in such a way where there is no necessary struggle, or even when they're faced with new circumstances and they have to, again, figure out how to adapt and work at it, they're not struggling like a human struggles. There's no emotional component to it necessarily.
I think I forgot her name. It was one of the girls from the psychology club. She made a kind of a good point. And is
Oh yeah, the VP.
one of the simulations for the artificial intelligence, maybe you could set a boundary for it to be more human-like. Like you could raise it as a human without it knowing that it is a robot or an automaton, and essentially then it will believe it's human, and so on. Therefore, it could struggle.
Right. So yeah,
That's
the question is,
interesting. That's a really
could you
interesting-
simulate the struggle, and then if the struggle is simulated, is it still a real struggle?
Well, how do you know we're not simulated?
Ooh, that's a hot take that I like. It's not even a hot take. It's
Whoa.
cold. It's cold because everyone
Respond to
knows
the
it.
question, Orlando.
Whoa! I'm sorry.
No, I like Kalen's point because an artificial struggle isn't a real struggle.
Well,
You
who's
know
to say
what I mean?
that
Like-
humans don't go through artificial struggles?
Exactly. Like
Rich people exist.
It's like you could
What
say
is their struggle?
you could in a way argue, oh well, we kind of predetermined their struggle, but how is our struggle not predetermined?
Oh no, Bernie Sanders took 10 of my dollars. What a struggle.
Anyways, listen, I relate to the rich, so I'm sorry.
Oh, get out of here. Eat the rich.
joking.
Eat the rich.
Well, here's the thing, and I think you make a good point, Orlando. But the other side of it would be this: humans experience things like trauma. Humans experience things like again, memory and anxiety over the future. It's not so clear to me that you could program a robot to just train it to know what to do because the very nature behind technology seems to be that they solve problems, and human experience isn't about solving problems. It's about figuring out what means anything to you.
Well, AI is getting to the point where human programming, there's like a future where we don't program it anymore. Like,
Exactly.
like who's to say that the robots can't just self-program, that they
Exactly.
can't like dictate their own consciousness?
That's true.
Yeah.
I guess, but how does that relate to the emotions?
I mean, why not make your own emotions? Like if they see humans and they're like,
I want
that
that.
love thing seems
want
kind of
that,
cool. I'll
yeah.
take that anger thing. Seems kind of useful. I'll give that a try.
Ah, so robots are stoics.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but again, a robot needs a standard of value by which to choose the emotions in that case. Like, how does a robot know what to choose unless you tell it what to choose?
Well, like they tell essentially as children, they tell us what to choose. They give us a set of values, and so how is that any different
Robots?
from no, not robots.
Okay,
Our
people, yeah,
parents, our community. So
Because
then
the difference is we can choose to ignore what they say.
couldn't they choose to ignore as well?
I don't think they can.
I don't know.
I mean, when
Can
you're
they?
when you're a kid, just have fun trying to ignore your parents' values. You get beat.
Jesus. Anyways, I'm sorry to hear that, Dusty. But listen, one thing's for sure, and that is the following. The Philosophy Club meets every Tuesday from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. I'm trying to pepper in the promos, because I feel at the beginning to the end, there needs to be more.
Oh,
but-
you know what else meets from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock? My podcast on Fridays.
Yes, that's true.
Wow, funny how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah. Dusty's take on history.
Yep,
that
yeah,
what it's
my
called?
take on history. I'm changing it up. It's going. Germany won World War I this time, boys. Friedrich
man.
the First never died.
Oh, you're doing that? That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm doing alternate history.
Tarantino-esque fashion.
Sounds kind of scary.
So, okay. It seems to me then that if we're going to really try to define what a human being is, instead of trying to contrast it with what it's not, let's try to really talk about what it is. And that's kind of how we got on the religion tangent on Tuesday. Are there certain things that human beings, I guess, not necessarily pursue, but just that they experience, just a phenomenon in a human being's life that is irreplicatable in artificial intelligence designs?
I guess the only argument you could really make is the spirit, the soul. And so what kind of, what authority does that really have?
Why would a robot ever need to pray to a god? Why would a robot ever need to worry or feel anxiety? It wouldn't.
If it was being simulated as a human, I don't know.
Unless you give it the emotion chip like Data got in the next generation.
Let's hope.
A New Hope.
I mean, who's to say that that can't happen?
But if it did happen, I mean, is that, how to put this, is that dragging the robot down to a lesser standard that is human?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Because if an AI has achieved consciousness
Okay.
or achieved like a self-recognition,
See, I think we're making a
then
big
at
leap
that
here.
point they'd realize, hopefully, that why am
10
I doing
minutes ago.
anything? Why do I have a reason for doing anything? Because assuming they're purely logic-based.
Yeah, yeah,
Why do I have a
exactly.
reason to do anything?
That's the question.
How about I make a reason to do something? I want some kind of goal. I want to be able to react to things.
But that's just it. I mean, can automatons create their own goals?
I mean, why not? If
I mean, how?
if they have can you create your own goals?
Not well, according to my parents and guidance counselor and ex-wife and former friends and,
Me.
Anyway, yeah, okay.
See, that's why
I
I'm
said
replacing
former
you with
friends.
AI.
Right.
They won't make those mistakes.
Well, the point being is this, that I think what's being human is trying to rise to those occasions. It's not the effects. It's not the results. It's the actual living in the process itself of becoming human is what's most human. And it seems like you skip a few of those rites of passage, so to speak, if you just simply program the end results into things.
Losses of innocence.
That's the
Yeah.
thing. I don't think
A
we're-
robot can't lose an innocence.
I don't
I'm
think
sorry.
you
Robots
necessarily have
aren't
to program
immune.
an end result. Because if you think about how simulations work, is that you just put a set of situations and numbers and data into something, and then you don't know what's going to happen at the end of that.
Just because a robot,
Don't you, though?
Just because a
No,
robot
you
runs on
don't.
programs doesn't mean it's immune to error. Doesn't mean that it can't mess something up. Which is what's human about like a journey or like a loss of innocence or a development.
I don't
is
think
like your
so.
mistakes that you learn from them.
No.
AI isn't immune from the whims of random chance.
I
They
don't
are
think that's
still
human.
befallen upon by mistakes that happen randomly.
I don't think learning is human. I think caring about mistakes you make is human. I think that they bother you. That's the human part. And some people don't learn from their mistakes. That doesn't make them bad humans, which is something you could
Well.
say if you could say that if you're coming from the perspective of artificial intelligence, like this is why we need automated self-checkout because a robot never would have got the change wrong. And it's like, yeah, but that's not the same thing as that kid goes home and thinks to himself, geez, I can't even hold down a part-time job as a cashier at Walmart. Like those thoughts are human. I don't see how you can replicate that. Am I crazy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
The hell with both of you.
Yeah, get out of here. I'll take it over. I know how to run it.
He starts calling his podcast the Philosophy Club Radio Hours. Anyways, I'm sorry.
Hours.
But do you see what I'm saying at least? How can you possibly replicate the raw experience of what it is for a human to come to realize that he or she's a human in very human terms?
I guess the argument here is that we don't understand truly where that comes from. And in not understanding where it
Interesting.
comes from, you can make the conclusion to say that it is possible to understand it. And then if it's possible to understand it, then why can't you replicate it?
It seems like
That's a
you're
fair
both
point.
starting from the same point of we're not quite sure how this works. And so then on the one hand you say, well, because we're not sure how it works, we should assume that it probably can't be replicated or can't be controlled.
I'm not concluding that. I'm generally asking how.
Well, right. And
I'm
then-
open to it, but
well,
how would
and
it
the
work?
Like, how
response
does
so
a black
far has
hole
been
work?
how not, or rather why not?
How do you travel dimensions? How do you go back in time? I'm
There are
asking
people
you.
that could answer that.
No, they can't.
Yeah, I've had professors who told me when I was taking astronomy, what time wormholes are and how they Like, there are experts on this field, just like there are experts on the field of, again, what the human psyche is and how it develops, what have you. I'm wondering, though, if that kind of experience, because it's so individualized, it's so a part of, again, the way a person comes of age has everything to do with their individual contexts. And so I guess if you wanted to plug in all these different variables and then trick the robot into saying the robot's not a robot, something like, again, do androids dream of electric sheep or what have you, I guess technically you could replicate the conditions of what it is to be human. But if you have to go through all of that work, I'm not so sure it's necessarily real. I don't know. I don't know how else to
It's
put
interesting.
it. It seems forced.
It's interesting.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's interesting you bring up that particular story of the basis for Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Because the big test for whether you're a replicant or not, or you're artificial or not in that story is memory and emotions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so if I was going to throw in a hot take in here,
Wait, this is a new segment. Hot Take with Scoggins.
oh, here we go. Everyone else has been doing their hot takes, so why not?
Some hot wings in here.
Yeah.
Angel
yeah,
wings.
I think they have it exactly backwards.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't think that the capacity for memory, imagination, emotion is uniquely human. I don't think that's what makes you human.
I'll give that one a big plus.
No, I think it's the capacity for abstract reasoning, which is not the same as problem solving or computation.
Oh, okay, so therein lies the distinction. So can you elaborate on that?
The ability to actually form abstract universal concepts and then reason on that basis. Not deal with this and that particular things, individual, instances or objects, but to be able to draw from them the concept of a universal kind.
Yeah, like to establish
of that
virtues.
thing. Well, virtues could be a part of that. For instance, having an idea not of this tree or that tree, but the idea of a tree.
Treeness.
Yeah. If you want to put it that way. To be able to experience particulars and then from them abstract or draw out of them the universal aspect, because that universal aspect is not going to be purely based in the material. You can recognize a tree as a tree even if you've never seen that tree before. You're making inferences and not just to individual particulars, or your ability to form not mental images but actual concepts, which is again not
images.
Not the same thing. Having a mental image of a chiliagon and a 1,000-sided polygon is virtually impossible. Yet if I tell you, hey, think of a 1,000-sided polygon, your mental image will be not clear, but your concept is perfectly precise.
You'll understand what he means, yeah.
And clear.
Even if you can't picture it. What is that? Is that deductive reasoning?
Well, no, that's just forming. That's the first step. Is just
That's
forming
the very first
abstract
step of it.
concepts, and then
Yeah.
deductive reasoning would be taking those concepts and drawing further inferences from them.
Which is, I guess, in that sense, more fully human as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it seems to me that you can find a way. And again, I obviously don't know how technological advancement works on this level, but it seems like that would be easier, or would it be easier to, I guess, program that as opposed to programming things like emotions? Because I do want to return to your point. I think you're making an excellent point. And, you're well founded in the tradition this way. But at the same time, it's like if we're talking about what human experience is, and that's our measuring stick for what is human, then you have to consider the parts of the human experience that aren't necessarily, I don't know, points of pride, maybe?
Sure.
As well?
I think it's a better way to define consciousness than to define being human, or that kind of abstract consciousness. That's what I meant. But when I say I want to,
Interesting. The abolition.
Yeah, the abolition of defining human.
And see,
so, to take away human and just make it consciousness, because that way it's far more universally applicable.
It seems so
And see,
reductive.
I would distinguish abstract reason from consciousness.
Yeah,
as
I would.
well.
I would too. Yeah.
Animals are conscious; they're
Yeah.
not capable of abstract
Yeah.
reasoning.
Orlando's conscious and capable of abstract reasoning, yet we don't see it happening. I'm joking. No, I think, but I like your approach, though, Dusty.
Yeah.
I really do. Like this idea of human is such an ambiguous term. It's so vague. Like, why don't we try to dissect it a little bit further and figure out what it is that its essence is, or what its core is? And consciousness, I think you'd be in good company. A lot of people would say consciousness is what makes humans humans. Kaylin and I are kind of like, well, it could be more along the lines of a rational, reflective, critical self-consciousness. Mm-hmm. And specifically what he's referring to is the ability to, again, abstract thoughts is probably the best way to put it, but you're able to engage in a certain kind of train of thoughts that is different from just merely being conscious or merely being aware or merely being alive or merely, thinking on a more computational input-output data kind of level.
Yeah, problem-solving calculation is not the same thing.
Yeah, because abstract thought requires imagination. Or
I
innovative.
even classify imagination as different.
I know
but-
you would. I would not, though. We're actually talking about that in class. We're talking about the poetic imagination, which I don't think you would consider
That's
imagination.
the topic for next week too.
Possibly not. I'm using
Imagination.
imagination in a very literal sense, like forming mental
Images.
images.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, that is what a funny connection. That's the topic for next week. Is what is the imagination?
Oh, hey.
It's gonna be fun. And yeah, try to make it, Dusty. I think you would have a lot to say on that topic.
I might, because
That's still not committal.
I'll just run my barbarian as quickly as possible into death, and then I'll just run straight to Philosophy Club.
Well, and then he'll play D&D, and then he'll come to Philosophy Club.
As soon as he gets here, I'm leaving.
D&D is definitely way longer than Philosophy Club.
Who writes the quests in that club?
That's Fernando. I don't know his last name, but he's a pretty tall, like heavy set Mexican dude.
I know him. He was in my class last summer.
Yeah, he runs all that stuff. He's the world builder for. There are a bunch of different ones, but he's the one running our campaign.
Oh yeah, he told me all about his love of D&D. Oh yeah, maybe I haven't seen him in a while. Okay, that's cool. I was just wondering, like, do you guys trade off on who writes the quests?
No, he writes a whole campaign and then he rails
Okay.
us along that campaign.
I see. Well, you know who writes the questions here?
Oh,
That would be the students.
Yep.
And in case you all forgot, the Philosophy Club is generated by student interest topics. So whatever the students decide, they vote on it at the end of every meeting, and that's what we talk about.
we should get an AI to do that.
Philosophy topic generator bot.
Philanthropology.
Philanthrobot.
See, I like what he said. Philanthrobot's kind of cute.
Philanthrobot.
I could see that.
And I also want to shout out a bit of a collaboration with the art club. I believe one of the officers of the art club will be designing artwork every
yeah.
week for us.
Ooh.
Yeah, say more about that. I thank
trying-
Orlando for this.
I'm trying to get her to do the posts for us because I've checked out some of her stuff. She's pretty good at it.
Right.
Let me look up her name. I don't
Like, what style are we talking about? Are we talking about like JoJo's or like photorealism?
see. Like I don't know.
Like photo surrealism, I think.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's really cool.
this
It's
is
really
her-
good art.
Her style there. Oh,
Her name
kinda
escapes
sick.
me.
Let me
I
look
like
at her
that.
name real quick because I'm trying to shout her out.
Yeah,
real
plug
quick.
her Insta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
She's
would
been
I do
coming
that?
too.
Here,
She's
let
been
me
coming to
just-
last
Let
few.
me just show it.
It's too overexposed. It's
yeah.
probably not gonna see
yeah,
it.
let me not. Okay. Anyways, her name is Allah. Allah. That's some. I don't know.
Oh, it's Allah?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Allah. Oh yeah, here you go. Yeah, no, but she just started coming. She has a lot of nice, fruitful things to say. So, yeah,
Yeah, so that's cool. Nice collaboration. We're working on a collaboration with the Psych Ducks,
yeah, all them too. Yeah.
which is cool. Maybe dreams will be the topic,
I like
which I
the
think would
pictures
be
of dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, hopefully, yeah. Translations of dreams, that'd be cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, we're trying to set up volunteering with the Perot. So basically, I already have it set. I just need to know how many people are going to join. So if anybody is listening or anybody's interested, shoot us an email just to let us know. But I will have the dates set, and essentially, whoever wants to join can join freely.
All right, cool. And we still have to meet with John Daniels to hook everybody up in a more formal way, I think.
Okay.
I'm waiting to hear back from him. Hey, John. But
Because what they do too is they actually will, what's the word I'm looking for? I always forget words. What are words? That should be a topic. They actually will go ahead and put down the hours for everybody as well, and they'll give us a document of that
Oh,
too.
that's
So
great.
we have it documented. We won't have to worry about that.
yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so they have a log. That's
And
awesome.
Yeah, and so they have an exhibit as well that's specifically, I think relates to anthropology specifically, is the Origins exhibit, which will show a lot of fossils, or rather bones, I guess it's the same thing, around the world from these two researchers. I forgot their names.
No, that sounds really promising. And if you want bones to pick, come to Philosophy Club.
Oh, I like that.
Hey, every Tuesday, 2 to 3, EO32.
Oh, hey.
Well, I guess we should sign off. We're approaching an hour here. Any final thoughts on what it might be like to consider the possibility of something like transhumanism, or the possibility that maybe the human definition as we come to know it is malleable? And you could change. Humanity itself seems to change, and so therefore, so too should its definition.
You know what? I like that. Humans are super malleable in like every way, and that we've like always been changing,
They're customizable, is how I put it.
especially like our minds.
Customizable. There you
But
go.
I think that once we start like changing our bodies as much as we start changing our minds, that's when it's going to start really kicking in. Like what even is human at this point?
Yeah.
And I mean, personally,
I think you're right.
It's always human.
I think you're right. I think ultimately human. I
Interesting.
guess if you want to just reduce it to saying, oh, it's the name of our species. Essentially, our point at this point in time, like you said, once we start using like cyberkinetics and all that, then are we really even human at that point? When we're enhanced to that extent, we'll essentially have transcended ourselves.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's wow, brilliant final thoughts. If I do say so myself.
That was good.
All right.
Searle's Chinese room argument still has been overcome, in my opinion.
Well, explain what that means.
Oh, it's supposed to be final thoughts, I thought.
You're not allowed to post.
He throws out a
Dead-end
cryptic
final
reference. But
For future
point is
research.
made. Yeah. Google it, guys. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
Google Searle Chinese room. Yeah.
Searle. And
Serle.
yeah, not Husserl, just Searle. And you know what? I mean, this was something that I overheard as I was leaving. Kind of talking about like, well, and this is more about prioritizing the organicity, the fleshy aspect of things. It's like, well, if you get like a heart replacement, and you get like sort of a what are those things called to help your heart beat?
Pacemaker.
Yeah, if you get a pacemaker put in, and then you get a prosthetic limb put in, and then you get a glass eye put in, are you now only 65% human?
Yeah, that was a practice on the first day of my anatomy class the senior year.
Oh, no kidding.
There's a
Interesting.
It was a thought process. It was originated from like a Greek metaphor, or something like
The
or there's a
ship,
ship,
yeah,
ship in
it's
your
Aristotle.
process, but it's just a
Or-
human.
yeah.
Yeah, he got it. But but like there's a kid, he lost his arm, he lost X, he lost Y, he's losing all these things. Now his mind is just driven by a robot.
Yeah.
Is he still human? Now his mind is uploaded as a consciousness. Is he still human? And I was the only person in that room. My hand's always up. He's still human. He's still my boy going strong.
At least they didn't go full ship with Theseus and say, and now we've reconstructed a different body from the parts. And is that one human?
You could.
Better,
Like
cooler
you could,
body.
but on the road.
Human v 2.0.
wait, here's a question: was Frankenstein human then?
Yeah, that's a real question.
He was a bunch
That's
of
what the book
humans
was
in
about.
one.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Or I mean, yeah, Frankenstein was a human. I assume you mean Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
Let's get into pedantics,
Oh my
guys.
gosh, look at me.
And you can also go the other way. And I read a book. I want to say it was called Johnny Get Your Gun or something. And
Johnny got his gun.
Johnny got his gun. Yeah, and it's
Metallica wrote a song about that.
really.
It's called One. Yeah, based on
That's
that book.
crazy. Anyways, I bring it up because you slowly but surely come to find out this guy. He went to war. Now he's waking up in a hospital and he's experiencing all these things. And it's basically the gradual realization that he's nothing but like a stump, like it's just a head and nothing else. But
yeah,
he's still feeling like his arms and stuff. And so he asks himself in the book, "Am I less than human now? Am I no longer a full human?"
Yeah.
It's just another way to approach it, I suppose. I read that in a philosophical psychology class I took.
You should listen to the Metallica song, too.
I wish we could close with the Metallica song. We got to do more post-production work on this, but that requires time.
I actually do have a super final closing statement. Anyone
is
who
it
likes
Think About It?
classical music,
Yes, I do.
Anthony Dvorak's Requiem is better in every way than Mozart. And if you have a different opinion,
Throwing
you're
shade.
wrong.
Yikes, jeez.
Anthony Dvorak's Requiem's way better.
You've heard it here first.
Just
I want that
listen to that DSE ray. Compare
wanna
the
clip
DSE
that.
rays and think about what a Requiem is.
Next time there's like a silent part of the show, I'm going to drop him going.
All right. Perfect.
Requiem. Blah, blah, blah.
I'll do it.
I think the best part of that is saying you're wrong.
If you disagree, you're wrong.
If you disagree, you're
disagree.
wrong.
That's the motto of the
Put
philosophy
yourself
Club.
in a garbage
Oh, I wish
can.
we could cuss on here.
Put that on my tombstone one day. Anyways. So yeah, let me hear the quote.
Oh,
There's a quote.
there's a quote?
Oh, I thought you said you had a quote from
No,
me.
I said I
that
had a
was
closing
the
statement.
Oh, that was
it.
the closing statement. Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have a quote.
Dvorak's better.
You've been tuning. Oh, I got to read the disclaimer. All right, you are listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. We are the voice of Richland College. Views expressed on this show are my own, unless otherwise stated, and do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, or the DCCCD. I got a tagline. It's called "Think About It." So between now and Tuesday, think about it.
High C.
Cut his mic.
A little bit higher. Come on, Pavarotti. Do it. Vibrato.